I intend to study and teach, to take and give benefit, to take and give reminders, benefit and assistance, and to inspire myself and others to hold fast to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to call to guidance and direct to goodness, seeking the countenance of Allah, His pleasure, nearness, and reward. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Okay, so we will start off with just doing a quick revision over what we have covered previously. Okay, so what did we cover as in terms of as a Tajweed rule in the first session? Okay, so what was the rule that we learnt? Can anyone pop it up for me? Okay, Noon Mushadda, good. What is a Noon Mushadda? Noon and Meme, thank you, Syra. So remember, it's Noon and Meme Mushadda. Okay, so we're talking about Noon and Meme Mushadda. Can someone write up what does Mushadda mean? Yep. So Mushadda is the little W we're talking about above a letter, and when we're talking about a word that is or a letter that is Mushadda, what am I referring to? So don't give me answers to the questions that I haven't even asked yet. Okay, so listen to what I'm asking. So I'm asking, what does the word Mushadda mean? Mushadda. So we know that it's something got to do with a shadda. So it's a letter, thank you. So it's a letter with a shadda on it. So when we're saying something is mushadda, we're saying it carries a shadda with it. Okay, so mushadda means something that is carrying a shadda. So when we're talking about noon and meme mushadda, we're essentially talking about a noon that carries a shadda or a meme that carries a shadda. Okay, and we learned that whenever you see a noon with a shadda on it or a meme with a shadda on it, we pronounce it with, I know some of you guys have already wrote it before, but I need it for this. Thank you, Haifa. So it's for, you pronounce it with gunna. Okay, so whenever you see a noon with a shadda or a meme with a shadda, you pronounce it with gunna. And gunna is the nasalization sound that comes from above the nose. Okay, and we said that as in terms of its practicality, it would be pronounced as anna, amma. And then if there was another letter in front of this noon, mushadda, we would pronounce it as banna, danna, thanna, and so forth. Okay, so the idea is that regardless of whatever letter comes before or after, whenever you see a noon with a shadda on it, a meme with a shadda on it, we hold on just slightly longer and we pronounce it with the gunna, with that nasalization. Okay, and we use the practicality as in terms of, as a task, we use Surah Nas to be able to see it in its reality. And in terms of how we pronounce it, we said that we would say قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ النَّاسِ. And we talked about the concept that as in terms of when we're starting as beginners and when we're just trying to understand the rule, it's fine for you to exaggerate this gunna so that it kind of is implanted within you and it becomes a norm. Okay, so when you're reciting and when you're practicing, just hold on longer, but eventually it'll get to a natural state where you're not even thinking about how long I'm doing that gunna. Okay, so it would just be like when I'm reading Qul A'udhu bi Rabbin Nas, I would say read it as Qul A'udhu bi Rabbin Nas, Malikin Nas, Ilahin Nas, and so forth. Okay, so it starts to become a natural thing. When you're practicing, you're slowing things down and you're really trying to be conscious about what you're seeing as in terms of a tajweed rule. So that was your rule on the first day. We didn't actually go through a new rule yesterday. We said that we were going to cover it in its full capacity today, but I just allowed you guys to hear it from Surah Falaq. Okay, so before we go into that tajweed rule, I'm just going to go through the letters that we've been covering so far. So we have done the alif, we've done the ba, we've done ta, we've done tha, we've done jim, we've done ha, and we've done kha. Okay, so that's our letters so far. So let's just read them together. So we've got alif, ba, da, with a smile, tha, and this letter, what do we need to remember? Someone quickly write it for me. Yeah, thank you. So we stick our tongue up. So again, alif, ba, da, tha, jim, ha, and kha. So with the ha, what did we say that we need to remember? The ha. Lots of air, yeah? So you're releasing as much air as you can, and we use the concept of putting your hand in front of your mouth and being able to feel a lot of air on your hand. Yeah, and we said with the ha, what how should we remember to pronounce it? Yeah, good, Shabina, thank you. So the ha is pronounced from the middle of the throat. Can anyone tell me what the ha is pronounced from? The top of the throat, Amna. Thank you so much. Okay, so the ha is pronounced from the top, and the ha is pronounced from the middle of the throat. The ha, lots of air released. The ha, what kind of sound should it make? Yeah, like a KH sound, but as in terms of like, what is that? When I say scratchy, I normally use the word scratchy, yes. So you should be able to hear a slight, a vibration of some sort. Kind of like a gargle, but the ghain is normally where you would use the concept of gargling. So with the ha, you would say it as ha, ha, and there's a slight scratch at the top. So again, alif, ba, da, tha, jim, ha, kha. One more time. Alif, ba, da, tha, jim, ha, kha. Okay? And the letters that we're going through today are dal, dhal, ra, za. Okay? So the dal is nice and simple and easy. So the actual, you know how we learned that jim is the name of the letter. The same concept with the dal. So when you're talking about the names of it, like alif, those are the names of it. But in its sound, the dal is a D sound, like dog. Okay? So you would say it as dal. And then this one, the dhal. Okay, so similar to the tha, what am I doing? Dhal. Dhal. Anyone? Yeah, I'm sticking my tongue out. Okay, so this is one of the other letters. So we had one letter that we've covered previously where we stick our tongue out. The second is the dhal. Okay, so now you need to remember, because we've covered it now, that whenever you see this letter dhal, you need to stick your tongue out. Okay, so for example, in Qul A'udhu, we need to be sticking our tongue out. When we're saying A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim, the dhu, we slightly stick our tongue out. Okay, so the difference between the tha and the dhal, okay, so just look at my face. So when I'm saying tha, I'm smiling a little bit more. Okay, the way to remember it is just like how that letter is, as in it's quite spread out. The same as in the sense that the tha, I stretch my mouth a little bit more in comparison to saying the. So that one is tha. That one is the. Okay, so it's not like round, but it's just slightly the, in comparison to the. And if you notice that as in terms of the tongue, because you're smiling out more, there's actually more, so as in terms of, when we're talking about side to side, more of it is released for the tha, in comparison to the. It's just more the tip. Okay, if that makes sense. So hopefully you can see it from how I'm doing it. But regardless, you need to remember that you're pronouncing it with sticking your tongue up. So there's 2 letters that we've covered so far where we have to stick our tongue up. So when we're saying this one, we're saying dal. When we're saying this one, we're saying dhal. Okay, and the next one is ra. Okay, so it's nice and easy, the ra. And then if you notice, when I'm saying raw, here I'm making it heavy. Well, as in it's quite a round mouth. But as in terms of when we say the raw, we don't say it's a heavy letter in its full capacity. We just pronounce it like raw with a full mouth here when we're pronouncing the letters. We don't worry too much about that at this point because we're going to go through the rule of raw at a later point. But the za is nice and easy. It's literally like a Z. Okay, like how you would say zoo, how you would say zapper, zipper, and so forth. Okay, so it's a similar concept. And so when we're going through it, we're saying dal, dhal, ra, za. Dal, dhal, ra, za. One more time. So dal, dhal, ra, za. Okay, so from the start, alif, ba, da, tha, jim, ha, kha, dal, dhal, ra, za. One more time. Alif, ba, da, tha, jim, ha, kha, dal, dhal, ra, za. Okay, and that's the letters that we're going to be covering today. Okay, so when we're practicing these, we're just practicing the letters that we've covered up until now, and we're paying more attention when we're reading our Quran to these letters. So the ones that I would say are the common mistakes are the tha, okay, the one where you're sticking your tongue out, and also the dhal, the one where you're sticking your tongue out. So you know now that when you're reading the Quran, whenever you see any of these 2 letters, you just stick your tongue out. Okay, regardless of whatever juz you're reading, it's the same concept. Also, you need to remember that with the ha, you need to get as much air as possible out. Okay, so this is another common one where we become a little bit lazy and we would just pronounce it as normal or without any air being released. Also the kha, okay, so those are the ones that you would be paying attention to when you're reciting your Quran at this point. Okay, and so when we're talking about Tajweed rules, I said that we were going to go through a rule today. Did I mention it? I can't remember whether I mentioned it, but if anyone does remember. Yeah, Kalkala, yeah. So the rule of Kalkala. So Kalkala is a common kind of like term that most people know when we're talking about Tajweed. There's this concept of Kalkala and so forth. So what does Kalkala actually mean, firstly? Does anybody know? What is, when we say, oh, what is Kalkala? So when I'm asking you tomorrow, what is Kalkala, you'll be saying to me, yeah, so it's a bounce, okay? So it's either known as an echo or a bounce. Okay, so an echo or a bounce. So when if I was to ask you what does kalkala mean, you're expected to say that, oh, it's an echo or a bounce. Okay, so kalkala, it refers to 5 letters. Okay, so it's known as 5 kalkala letters, and those letters are qaf, ta, ba, jim, and dal. Okay, so there's 5 kalkala letters, and those are qaf, ta, ba, Jim, and Dal. So it'd be good for you to be noting this down, okay, because you need to remember it. Okay, so the rule is that whenever you see any of these 5 letters, and the important thing here is that whenever you see these 5 letters and they have a sukoon on them, okay, so a sukoon, it either looks like a circle, so sometimes in some Qur'ans it's literally like a circle, in some Qur'ans it looks like a little crescent. Okay, so and then sometimes it doesn't have anything on it, but these letters will have something. It'll either have a circle or it'll have a little crescent. It just depends on your script style in your Quran. Okay, but the idea is that as long as this qaf doesn't have a fatah on it, or a kasra, or a damma, or a fatatain, or a kasratain, or a dammatain, so these signs, as long as they don't have these on it, then it falls into the category of qalqala. Okay, so remember that if any of these 5 letters have a sukoon on it, so I'll draw the sukoon as just a circle. So if these 5 letters have a sukoon on it, we bounce on them. Okay, so that's literally the rule, that whenever you see any of these 5 qalqala letters and they have a sukoon on them, we bounce on them. So what does it mean when I'm saying that we bounce on them? I wouldn't say this as, so I'm going to put an alif before every letter to help explain. Okay, so here I wouldn't say ak, I would say aqa, aqa. And that slight bounce is what we're referring to when we're saying kalkala. We say aqa. The same here, ata, ata. Same thing here, aba, aba. So it's not a fatah, it's not an at sound in its complete full sense, just a slight bounce. Okay, so again, aqa, ata, aba, aja, ada. Okay, so as in terms of sometimes when you're learning it for the first time, it's really strange to hear, but as in terms of it'll start to become a norm once you are reciting again, and it won't be as emphasized as I'm doing right now. So again, I'm just going to repeat over that the rule of qalqala is that qalqala, firstly, it means an echo or a bounce. There's 5 qalqala letters. Those 5 letters are qaf, ta, ba, jim, dal. And the rule is that whenever any of these 5 letters have a sukoon on them, we pronounce it with a bounce, with qalqala. Okay, so again it would be pronounced as aqa, ata, aba. Make sure that you're on mute. So again, aqa, ata, aba, aja, ada. Okay, so that's your rule for today. Now this rule, as in terms of, we will be pointing it out on a regular basis when we're going through our surahs and so forth. So don't worry if it doesn't completely make sense at this point. When we see it in its reality, that's when we would be able to apply it. Now somebody's asking, where would we see this? In the middle of a word or at the end of an ayah? Both, Adiba. Okay, so sometimes you would see it in the middle of a word, sometimes we would see it at the end of an ayah. Okay, but don't worry about that too much for now. When we're talking about its reality, I'll start pointing it out, and then we will see, we'll add a bit of more meat to this rule as we go along. But as a basic concept for today, I just want you to remember that there's these 5 letters and try and memorize them. Now there's a little famous saying, as in terms of how you would remember these letters. Does anybody know what that famous little, there's 2 words that normally people use and everybody knows it normally when they're studying? Yeah, so Sarah, yeah, it's kutubu jaddin. Okay, so again, this is like in the Arab world, when you're learning Tajweed, it's just to help you remember what these letters are, qaf, ta, ba, jim, dal. So there's a little saying that's called kutubu, kutubu jaddin. Okay, and I'll just write it in English here. So it's kutubu jaddin. Okay, so kutubu jaddin is normally just it's a phrase that's in the Tajweed world where you would use in order for you to remember these letters. Okay, but what's more important, because what I found over the years is that people remember this little phrase, they'll remember kutubu jaddin, but they won't actually know which ta it's referring to when we say the tu bit. Okay, so they'll get confused with the ta with the two dots. Okay, so it's more important for you to actually remember and memorize these 5 letters than it is for you to memorize this saying. Okay, so remember it's these 5 letters that you're paying attention to for today. Okay, so that's that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is that we're just going to go through a surah. I'll just bring one up. Okay. So we're going to go through Surah Ikhlas today. And so, because we've gone through Surah Nas and we've gone through Surah Falak, not in its full capacity, but just as examples to look at. So when we're going through this one, we're paying attention to this rule of kalkala. Okay, so remember, we're looking for any qafs, any ta's, any bas, any jeems, any dals that have a sukoon on them. Okay, so I'm going to recite it with you guys first, and then while I'm doing so, just pay attention to the way that I'm reciting it and see if anything resonates with you. Okay, so again, we'll start with A'udhu Billah. So when I'm saying A'udhu Billah now, you know that the dhal, the one with a dot on top, we need to stick our tongue out. Okay, so pay attention to it now when we're reciting. So it starts with A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaytanir Rajim. Again, A'udhu with the dhu sticking your tongue out. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن. So again, paying attention to the ha, lots of air. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحيم. The first ayah. قل هو الله أحد. Again, قل هو الله أحد. So listen to that ha when I'm saying أحد. And then if you notice that I am bouncing on that dal. So again, قل هو الله أحد. And that is the rule of kalkala that I'm just going to point out for now. قل هو الله أحد. الله الصمد. لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. Okay, so I'm going to ask you now if you can have a look at this surah and count how many kalkalas you can see in this surah. So you're paying attention to those 5 letters, qaf, ta, ba, jim, dal, if they have a sukoon on it. And I'll give you the idea or the tip that as in when you're at the end of an ayah, it naturally has a sukoon on it. Okay, so you can recite technically the surah, you can recite it as قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ Allahu. So you would read it as قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ. Okay, if you're continuing on, but we normally end each ayah with a sukoon. So that would still, the qalqala would still apply, whether it's a literal, where you can actually see the sukoon, whether it's at the end of an ayah. Okay, so the question goes out again, that how many qalqalas can you see in this surah? And I will ask you to write it up as a question, in the chat bit for me, please. How many are you finding? Oh, you guys are already writing it in. Okay, so some of you have put 5 and some of you have put 4. Okay, so let's see how many there are. So we've got قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ 1. Allahu Samad 2. Lam Yalid 3. Walam Yulad 4. Walam Yakul Lahu Kufuwan Ahad 5. Okay, so those of you that put 4, it's likely that you didn't realize the Lam Yalid. Okay, I'm assuming so. Okay, so let's do it again. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ Allahu Samad لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. Okay, so 5 qalqalas in this surah. Okay, also if you can have a look through it, and just as because we've got a couple of minutes, can anyone count how many letters are from the middle of the throat? Okay, we've only gone through one letter, which is the ha. So can anyone quickly just count how many has there are in this surah? Okay, some of you have put 2. So let's have a look through. So قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Okay, so we've got ahada in قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Allahu Samad. There's no has in this. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. None. Wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. 2. Okay. Are there any letters in this surah where I need to remember to stick my tongue out? So we've gone through 2 letters where we would stick our tongue out. That is the tha with the 3 dots on it, and the zal, the one that's after dal. Okay. Are there any letters that I would be sticking my tongue out? And there are none. Yep, well done. Okay, and what else did we say? We said about the letter ha. Okay, is there any letter ha in here? No. Okay, that's it. So we'll just read it one more time together, and I will just repeat over the lesson. So read from the start. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. And again, you are emphasizing it more, exaggerating it more at this point, so that you can be conscious about it when you are in your when you're reciting. Okay, and just as a reminder, so what does it sound like when you aren't emphasizing it? So it would literally, if I was reading the surah, it wouldn't be that much of a difference, to be fair, because I would be reciting it as Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Qul huwa Allahu Ahad, Allahu Samad, Lam Yalid wa Lam Yulad, wa Lam Yakul Lahu Kufuwan Ahad. So it's kind of there, but maybe it's just not as slow paced. Okay, and I'm just going to stop the share. Bring you back to me. Okay, and we are just going to just quickly go over those letters one more time. So we have alif, alif, ba, ta, tha, jim, ha, kha, dal, dhal, ra, za. Okay, one more time. Alif, ba, ta, tha, jim, ha, kha, dal, dhal, ra,